The Schmo, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Osner, you chased the schmo down long overdue. We're here in quarantine on Fight Island. It's a pleasure to be joining you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, man. How's the Fight Island so far?
So far, so good. I mean, I haven't seen much outside of this luxurious hotel room at the Crown Plaza. This is the schmo's second time here, so we do know what to expect, but first class treatment as always. Safety first. They all are in the hazmat suits. We get tested. The schmo's got a second COVID test about 20 minutes ago. We got about 24 hours left of this quarantine, and we're good to go.
The listeners already figure out that you're true Schmo, so let's bring Dave in. Let's talk to Dave.
Thought you never ask.
You look way too normal now. Way too normal. It's almost not interesting anymore. I'm kidding. Yeah, it was a funny Russian joke. So, you mentioned that you had two COVID tests already.
Yes, we've had actually two already.
How does it work? Like, it seems like you guys are being tested the same way as fighters, and who controls it?
I've been getting at least two COVID tests every single week covering the UFC. Basically, you have a choice between the nasal or the throat, and it takes them about, at least in the United States in Vegas, about 6 hours to get the test results back. Here, it's give or take 12 to 24 hours. But it's the same test, the same administration. I couldn't give you the exact pinpoint person, but everything is like government regulated and standardized, and everybody has to get it. Specifically here on Fight Island, we are in a bubble. The workers here, from my understanding, the locals had to be quarantined for 14 days prior to coming into this bubble. Which us, if we complain about 48 hours, that's nothing compared to 14 days. So the fighters and the media covering it, the UFC staff and personnel, we all are under the same strict regulations and rules. Two COVID tests so far here in Fight Island. I've been here for 24 hours essentially, and one before we got on the plane in Las Vegas.
And is it administered by the government of Abu Dhabi or the UFC itself?
The government of Abu Dhabi certainly here. And then in terms of, government, that I for sure know that the UFC doesn't handle it. They definitely outsource it to the important health officials.
Got it. You were at UFC Vegas. I saw you there, not in person, but tell me about this event. Seems like it was fantastic in my view. What were the most memorable fights for you? Which one do you like the most?
Yeah, no, I loved it. It was honestly, it was the first time, and I've said this, I was telling this to Helen, my girlfriend and coworker, we were talking about this too. It was probably the best UFC fight night we have both have ever attended. It was a stacked card. It was as good as a pay-per-view card.
Yes.
Arguably from top down, it might be a better fight card than here what we have at UFC 253 at Fight Island. Maybe not the main event, for sure not the main event. We're talking a potential fight of the year and Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya. But in terms of top to bottom, it was stacked. I loved it. How could you not love Khamzat Chimaev just living up to the full expectation? Literally one punch when he knocked out Gerard Merchart. I mean, how could you not be impressed with this kid?
Holy shit!
He's doing things that haven't been done before in the UFC. How quickly he's turning around. If you look at the ratio of strikes he's landed versus strikes that have connected with himself, it's off the charts.
I saw the comment on YouTube today. Actually, like, holy cow, it's right. They basically said this guy has more UFC bonuses than missed strikes. I'm like, yeah, it's 3-1. This is stupid, crazy. Yeah, I'm like,
it's crazy because like he's got this people are calling him like the evil Khabib. He's got this he's got this very sinister style where he's kind of soft spoken. I will smash you, I will break you type mentality, and he backs it up. So that's where I have to start if we're going to go through that fight card. He backs it up. To me, he's the star. He's the gem. Absolutely love that. I was extremely impressed with someone like Randy Costa. He was like the third fight. It was on the prelims. That leg kick or the head kick KO, super impressive. I've watched him a couple of times fighting now, and he's a scrappy, good-looking fighter dude. He's fights at bantamweight, and he's taller, lengthier, and with the reach, and he's just someone fun to watch. So for the diehards, that was something that really obviously was something that resonated with me too. So there you go. You got a prelim, and then you got a regular main card right there.
Yeah, I want to ask one more question on Chimaev because yeah, as everyone, I'm very curious about the guy. One thing I also find very interesting is the Dana's comments that hey, he's never seen anyone like him, and in the past those comments were reserved for Conor,
Yes.
and now I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And do you think he would be as marketable as Conor, given he's not that big of a promoter?
So it's fascinating. I don't think there's ever going to be another Conor McGregor. The same way I say for the sport of basketball, my first love, Michael Jordan, the Bulls. There's never going to be another Michael Jordan. I think what Conor McGregor did for the sport, how he revolutionized it, and then how he was able to cross over to boxing and fight the biggest name in boxing and Floyd Mayweather. The way Conor was able to sell tickets and get an entire country behind him, like that was unprecedented what he did, and it carried over. And now he hasn't been fighting, right? I mean, his last fight, he made that appearance against Donald Cowboy Cerrone to kick off the year in that UFC pay-per-view card in January. And obviously, it hasn't been active the past few years. But a lot of people, especially the fans, are like, oh, he's the next Conor. Oh, this reminds me of Conor McGregor. That's legacy. That's something that you can't replicate. And I think that's the weight that he carries, and the trash talk that Conor had, the entertainment. I don't think we'll ever see that quick wit type of personality. I mean, I don't think that's in Chimaev's nature to do it. He's got his own personality and background. I think what the legacy Chimaev is obviously going to be able to do is obviously with what he does in the cage and how he conducts himself. I think it was huge that he was able to get the visas to come to the United States. And now it's kind of anticlimactic in a way because this guy deserves to sell out arenas and we can't have any fans to really see him, and we can't see how he would react to the electricity of the crowd. So that's doing him a disservice in a way, but he certainly has all the capabilities to carve his own lane as one of the all-time great. Oh man, we're saying this so early, but look, if you continue on this trajectory and you take down names and you get titles in two different weight classes like Conor McGregor, you certainly are carving out your legacy as one of the all-time greats in this sport. And not saying that's what he's going to do, but if he continues down this path and he wants to fight at welterweight and middleweight and he gets titles in both those weight classes, which is a very, very tall task, I might say, then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, and are you going to stay for all 5 weeks, or you're gonna leave?
That's a great question. So I'm not going to stay for all 5 weeks. I'll be here for 3 of the 5 fights. So we're here for this week. So technically we're only here 8 days, 7 days. We leave Sunday. We'll be back in Vegas for a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. Then we come back here October 9th, and we'll be back for the last fight card, Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. And then obviously UFC 254 with Khabib and Justin Gaethje.
Oh, it's probably fascinating during that time in Abu Dhabi. Did you go last time Khabib fought?
I was not here when Khabib fought here. So this is my second time in Abu Dhabi. So my first time being the first fight island. I was not here that time Khabib. The last time I saw Khabib, and the only time I believe I saw Khabib fight in person was when he beat Conor McGregor at UFC 229.
Oh, tell me about the atmosphere on the arena back then.
Absolutely electric. Absolutely electric. See, I'll give you something too. So back in those days, the Schmo wasn't credentialed to be sitting in the arena. I had to kind of use I was in the tent next door, so I kind of had to sneak my way into the arena back in those days. So absolutely electric, especially when he jumped the cage and everything like that. I only really saw it from afar. I was kind of like in a fan's perspective. So I was not credentialed to sit in the arena for that fight. So I had to get my way in there. I was only allowed to be in the media tent.
Well, you had a big promotion. I have to say, you came out of freaking nowhere and you took MMA world by storm. Well, good for you, man. Well deserved.
I appreciate that. That's the perception, though, is that I came out of nowhere, specifically in MMA. But the thing is, I had been grinding with this character for a long time. But even longer than grinding with this character, I myself, David Schmulenson, have been grinding in sports media for a very, very long time. Since the moment I graduated from college back in 2012, I had been on this journey, and MMA really started for me back in the summer of 2018. UFC 227 was the first time I was credentialed to a UFC fight. It was Demetrius Johnson, Henry Cejudo 2. TJ Dillashaw fighting Cody Garbrandt the second time as well. So
let's talk about it in order, like in actual reversed order. Let's talk about the Schmo character.
okay.
How did you develop that character? Where did it come from?
So I'm from Chicago. That's my roots. And I grew up with a great sense of humor. The Chicago Second City Legends. If you're familiar, John Belushi, Chris Farley, Mike Myers, all came from
Mm-hmm.
there. All those guys, Harry Carey, Chicago broadcast legend for both the Cubs and the White Sox, and our baseball teams. So I come from this goofy, diehard sports atmosphere, but with these fun cast of characters. And I've always had the personality. And when I realized in my teenage years in high school, when I was not good enough to be a professional basketball player, the next best thing to do would be talking about sports. So, and I've always loved sports. And if I couldn't be a professional athlete, the next best thing to do would be talking about professional sports. So that's kind of how that all glued together from that perspective. So the Schmo character, I was working it was during the time I was working at USA Today Sports. I was consulting sports websites and making friends with all the journalists that I can, so I could just, on my weekends and free time, write articles. I would call college basketball directors and write about small conferences like the I couldn't even tell you how small, like the MAC conference and the not even the ACC, but the AAC basketball conference. There's some very small names, and I was covering like the Nike Elite 11 football camps and everything like that nature. But that's where I first got exposed to a site like MMA Junkie, because they were owned and operated by USA Today, and I was part of my job was to consult sports websites. So I knew how they operated, I knew how they monetized, and knew how that worked from that angle of it. But I did this taking that step sideways or backwards so I could get into my passion, sports broadcasting. So I have a buddy who's a producer for Jimmy Kimmel who inspired me to do some YouTube videos. And we started making some fun YouTube videos, actually, as myself, what to do now the football season's over. If you go back to my YouTube channel and see my first 3 original YouTube videos, how to pick the perfect bracket, why David Schmulenson should be the first pick in the 2015 NFL football draft. Like that's kind of how the goofiness and the YouTube stuff translated to TV from the onset. Now, in terms of the Schmo character, I was living in Los Angeles. This is during that time. I lived with 2 roommates. We were all goofing off. I was probably smoking some marijuana. That's usually the case. Was
it legal back then?
In California, for sure. I probably had my medical card. We pulled out a turtleneck and a funky blazer. Craig Sager meets Rodney Dangerfield, which is another comedic legend. I think he's from New York, but I Get No Respect. That kind of always resonated with me. And Craig Sager dressed extremely well. So, and I created this character, the Schmo, and I created my own sports website, the Schmo Zone Lair, which was a blog just to write sports. And basically all this came to fruition because nobody gave David Schmulenson a chance. So I'm like, look, the sports industry desperately needs change. These athletes get the same BS, repetitive questions. If you're a baseball player, how does it feel? You get the World Series, you hit a home run, you struck out, or this guy sucks, whatever. You get the same generic BS in sports. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to create this character, make it self-deprecating, showcase the athletes' personalities at my expense with that goofiness, that character. So I did that. We're getting a knock on our door here they're probably delivering us some food right now. They deliver our meals here at the hotel. So I created this character, just one thing led to another, and I've developed it over time with that type of premise, and it kind of evolving, adapting over time. And when I started with it, I started doing this with NFL players and NBA athletes and doing it for USA Today Sports. But then as it progressed, I started doing it for myself. And and it just one thing led to another.
Did Schmo evolve somehow, or it was always the same guy?
It was always the premise of the same guy, but it certainly involved the Schmo Zone. So when I was a kid, I went to space camp. So the idea of the Schmo Zone layer was this extra atmosphere. There's the ozone layer, the
Mm.
atmosphere, the ozone layer, the stratosphere. You have the Schmo Zone layer where the air is thin, the sports get heavy. It started as the Schmo Zone layer when I was by myself. Then when it became a blog, it actually dropped the layer to the Schmo Zone. I had contributing writers. I had my editor in chief of the schmozone.com. He had this obsession with Vlade Divac, the NBA center. And I had someone writing named Commissioner Gordon. I had someone called the Rain Man. These are just characters. Everyone had a character. So I'm like, well, it's the Schmo Zone. I got to be the Schmo. What's the Schmo look like? And that's kind of how that idea of being a character would develop. And obviously, I've always liked things like Batman and Superman and those types of cartoons. And you know, um, I just connected the dots, man. I'm a very cerebral person. I like to think critically. I don't like to follow trends or the leads. I like to create my own path. And this industry desperately needed some change. And I just felt like I had to inject some life into it. And by doing this, by being a character, that would do that.
So I looked at your LinkedIn. I think it started back in 2016 or something like that. It's been, as you said, it's been a long journey. So looking, going back to your first interviews, do you remember the first interview in this character?
100%.
Walk me through that.
I'll never forget it. I was with USA Today. I was coming back from a conference, a fantasy sports conference, because I consulted sports websites. It was a Southwest flight. I was on the plane and I recognized the face. I'm like, shoot, that's Coach Rick Neuheisel, the former coach of the UCLA football team, Washington Huskies, analyst for CBS Sports. So I go and I'm I used to be a really shy guy too. Sometimes I'm an introverted extrovert, but I go up to Rick Neuheisel. I knew his son was, and I used this line too because his son was a quarterback for UCLA, but so was Josh Rosen. He gave up his position to start, who was a senior, because Josh Rosen was a freshman that was going to be an NFL football player, which he is now, and was going to take the job. So I said, Coach, big fan of your work, what you do. It's very admirable of your son to be a leader and take that role and to stay behind and everything and let Josh Rosen take the course. He loved that. I said that, and I said, hey, I work for USA Today, by the way, Coach, but I'm starting this character. Um, I'm the schmo, you're the pro, and I would love to interview you. And he invited me to his house in Manhattan Beach,
Holy
California.
moly.
Now, I didn't have my yellow glasses. I actually had big specs, but they were white lenses too. And I go there. I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere. He's playing the guitar, and we do this interview. And that was technically the first The Schmo and the Pro interview I ever did, was at Rick Neuheisel's house in Manhattan Beach. Not a lot of people know that story, actually.
That's a really cool story, and that's great memory. You got the right guy, and so suddenly you have this resume, right? Like you already have somebody very famous you interviewed. Was it easy going from there, or it's still just the
It was
beginning?
so it was still just the beginning. I would say when the floodgates went open was when I brought this to USA Today. The second athlete I brought was Terrell Owens, the NFL Hall of Famer. When I had T.O. on the show at USA Today, I believe he was my second or third guest. I think it was my second guest. Jerry Hairston Jr., the baseball player, was the first guest. When I brought him to USA Today, and that was the thing. I had to convince my bosses to allow me to do this. I had trademarked it. I owned it all and everything, but I was putting it on the biglead.com, which they owned. Owned and operated site from USA Today to help them get some video traction, because video pre-roll was another way for them to monetize those 10, 15-second ads. This is different from YouTube too, by the way. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't believe in YouTube. That's my business now, is YouTube, a lot of my videos and monetizing those. But those pre-roll ads you put on top. So I when I got Terrell Owens, convinced him to come on the show. That opened the floodgates for me to get in athletes, and basically I became part of the car wash. When I say car wash, athletes come to LA, they go to ESPN, the NFL Network, Fox Sports, then they go see the Schmo at USA Today.
Oh man.
I became part of the car wash. So there's part of this story. So back in 2017 when I started this and wasn't getting paid for it, just doing it as on the side for USA Today, I thought I'd made it. I thought I was escalating. I thought I was taking over everything, and then I had a huge setback. And everything happens for a reason. And uh, you know, grinding away, and then doors open, and positive things, positive vibes, and one thing led to another.
Do you want to tell us about that setback, or are you gonna move on?
I'm gonna write about it in a book one day, but
Okay.
basically, I got forced out of corporate America in April 2017, and
Hmm.
I never looked back. I never looked back. Basically, um, it was basically that. I'm gonna write about it in a book one day, my man. But
Sounds good.
that's what I could say.
But that's nuts. It's like it's pretty much the beginning. When did you? I think you kind of blew up on the MMA scene in April 2019. That
Yes.
165 question.
100%. You were 100% right. It's funny because it was exactly 2 years ago from probably one of my lowest points of my life was 2 years later was when I blew up at the UFC 236 in Atlanta at April at that press conference, having the last question, asking Dana the 165-pound weight division question.
It was insane. Like it's interesting. I saw you prior to that as well, right? You already were taking interviews, but you just weren't in the room with the media. Is it the story?
Not true. I was there. I was grinding for about 10, 11 months. So
Mm-hmm.
since UFC 227 in August, I had been going to a lot of these UFC fight cards. That was the first time, though, I'd ever asked a question at a press conference.
Mm-hmm.
My style's always to do these goofy interviews, the
Yes.
Schmo and the Pro, these one-on-ones, get next to them and everything like that. But I was running out of money to spend on myself. I was running out of time to continue grinding. And I felt like, look, I built it, they come. If the world could see what I'm doing, if I could, all these other platforms will pick up what I'm doing, then it will change everything. So I finally got the courage and the wherewithal to ask a question at the press conference. And I had planned that for 3 weeks, same delivery, how I was going to ask it. And it could not have worked out more perfectly. It was a big gamble on myself, which is a big part of that coming to fruition. So it paid off, and I've never looked back.
Obviously Dana's reaction was it was first kind of funny, and as you said, it was self-deprecating. Your character is self-deprecating, so he played to it, but his reaction actually played a lot of big role into the fact that you kind of blew up, right? Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. Before that, I probably made 100 requests to interview Dana one on one, denied every time. Now, he had no idea who I was,
Of
no
course.
clue, denied every time. Um, and his reaction could not have worked better. In fact, I said this to Helen and my father before I did this interview. They're either going to love me or they're going to escort me out,
Yeah.
and I'll never be invited back to or credentialed to another UFC event ever again. It's going to go one of two ways. So after that question, the next day at the fight, Dana invited me up to his suite to interview him one on one. So yeah, of course, it was life changing for me.
Holy shit, he invited you himself, or you followed up?
I was invited. I mean, his
Oh, that's pretty cool,
the
man.
UFC. Yeah, I got invited to interview him.
I didn't realize it was next day. I remember the interview. I thought it was the same day when you. I thought you caught him somewhere in the lobby or somewhere, and you talked about the question itself and everything
It
else.
looked like a lobby, didn't it? It was actually
Yeah,
the white wall in his suite in
gotcha.
the arena, in that basketball arena in Atlanta where the fight was.
And I saw recently you had him on the Schmozone podcast.
I did,
All right, man,
yes.
you've made it. Congrats. So,
Thank you.
take me back to those 2 years in between, right? How many times in those 2 years you wanted to say, "Screw this! I wanna get a job. I wanna something stable, and this is nuts."
There were a lot of nights, man, where I cried myself to sleep, and then I would run out of tears because I was running out of time. I didn't know, very few people believed in me. Like outside of my family, nobody believed in me. I went and I moved in with my brother to pay rent. You know, my older brother took care of me, and I was constantly grinding, man. I was making no money. I, it's kind of crazy now because if you fast forward to where we are now in this pandemic, so many people have lost their jobs the past 5, 6 months, and they don't know what to do. They feel hopeless in many ways. I had those moments, especially the back half of 2018 and the beginning of 2008, or sorry, the back half of 2017 and the big portion of 2018. I felt that way. I had to grind relentlessly to get sponsors, to get people to believe in the content I was doing, to grow my social media, to get access. One of the best decisions I've made too was when I pivoted to combat sports. I pivoted to boxing first before I pivoted to MMA. And what I had realized is with these NFL and the NBA athletes, which is why I looked first, because those NFL and the NBA, two biggest sports in this country and the USA, where you make the most amount of money. And, two passions I have, I'm a diehard football and basketball fan. Just like I'm a diehard MMA fan, I'm a diehard basketball and football fan. I love sports. In general. So, but the thing is, with these NFL and NBA athletes, these team sports, there's so much self-entitlement. The teams, the publicists of the teams control the message. In
Mm.
combat sports, if you're a fighter, you're only as good as your next fight. So a lot of these guys have humble beginnings. And this character really resonated with a lot of these guys because they're these big, tough gladiator type warriors. And then they see this goofy character come in there and just have no fear and come in there. And obviously I do my due diligence. I do my homework. My work ethic speaks for itself. I don't need to talk about it. I show it. That's the kind of person I am. Let my actions speak louder than my words. I know the schmo speaks pretty loud, but just let my actions speak louder than my words. And when I pivoted to combat sports in late 2018, man, and sponsors, things started clicking. Even though it was really damn hard until April of 2019, man. April of 2019 changed everything.
Was it like overnight change, meaning that as soon as that interview with Dana happened, doors just opened, or it was still a lot of work uh, going into, I don't know, everything?
So I spent those 2 years planting a lot of seeds. I'm a really, really good at hustling. I'm a really strong entrepreneur. I'm very business savvy. Everything like, my last job in corporate America was to consult sports websites, how to make money in this digital age. The internet's the wild, wild west. So different ways to monetize, whether it's merch, whether it's straight up ads, whether it's direct content for sponsors. I had strategies no matter what I did. Um, I knew after that April press conference, I knew my life would never be the same. And I knew how hard I worked to get there. I'm like, my foot's on the gas pedal. I need to continue to keep my foot on the gas pedal, but I need to floor it just a little bit harder. And that's what I've been consistently doing because now I got the world watching. How do I keep them? How do I grow it? And I knew that would happen. So I wouldn't say it happened overnight. I mean, I obviously got a lot more followers and they continue to get more followers by the day since then. But the doors slowly began opening and it became easier getting more sponsors. It became easier to get more respect because everyone had said to me, all the networks that I've been blown off by ESPN, NBC, Fox Sports for years. They all said, oh, kid, you're talented or anything, but what's your numbers? What's your following? And I didn't have that,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that. Then the second I got that, crickets. They don't say shit because they can't control it. They don't get it. I still haven't heard from those guys. They still try to ignore me, but I laugh. What I've realized throughout this journey is I don't need these big networks. They need me more than I need them. And guess what? I don't want them. I'm building my own empire. I'm building the Schmo network, baby. That's what it's about.
Look at this guy. That's a great mindset. I'm a banker, so I appreciate that a lot. So tell me about mm, the business side, because I've noticed a few things that you really do fantastically. Like starting from merch. Your merch is a very different quality of the ones I see from from other people, whether it's broadcasters or whoever, they go to tier spin, whatever you call that site where
Yeah.
everything is the same. Your stuff looks very, very different. Seems like you really invested some time and you got real quality. What is that? Where does that come from? From your experience?
Yeah, so actually, so part of that was 2 years, and I believe it was 2017. I got connected from these young kids, younger than me. They're in their mid 20s. They're entrepreneurs. Wooter Apparel, kids in Long Island that reminded me of young Kevin Plank. Kevin Plank, the CEO of Under Armour. You know, he started with a dream and a vision, and he was grinding, and he found ways to make things work. These kids reminded me they had qualities like that. The two guys I met. And I told them what I was doing. I told them what I was looking to do. I have the Schmo and the Pro. I'm looking to do the Schmo versus the Pro with these athletes. Look, let's get in business together. I might not have the following now, but be patient with me. We will grow this thing together. And they did. And they started making me some Schmo merch right back in 2017 that I've always had, right? And then I started growing it from there. And those guys have made my Schmo suit. They've made some other unique T-shirts and whatnot. And then now with Helen and I, with the Schmo Zone, I know enough where we can go off and do our own thing, in which we are right now. But it's about building the relationships, and it takes a lot of time to find the right quality people. But they are out there. You win some, you lose some. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes in business throughout this journey as well. But that's how I came across those guys. You know, it was through Instagram, it was through social media as we
Mhm.
found each other. And you know, since we found each other, since then they've been growing. I know they do a lot of stuff with charity, college athletics, and everything. I know they did Floyd Mayweather's charity basketball stuff. They've done stuff with Rob Gronkowski.
Oh wow.
They've done some big things, and I've introduced them to some fighters now. So fighters are going through them for some merch too. So,
Oh
you
wow.
know,
Look at
everything
you.
comes full circle, man. Everything comes full circle.
I didn't want to drag Helen into this conversation, but you mentioned her a couple of times. Did you guys meet while you were covering combat sports or prior to that?
We actually met while we were covering combat sports. She was the only one that would grind and work the way I grind and work. I would see her at boxing events and at UFC events. In fact, I saw her at a Bellator fight too. We were in the same places at the same time. And, we just went out for a drink one night and kind of clicked and hit it off, and the rest was kind of history.
And so let's move on. Say hi. I know you guys. Yeah.
We're stuck in the same room right now. We're quarantined. She's not far from me, so of course she's gonna hear everything.
All
I'd
right.
show her on camera right now, but she's in a robe.
Hey, let's go further back to um your Chicago days when I'm assuming you're from Chicago because 312 is all over your website and everything. Is it
Yes,
fair?
312 is the biggest area code in the Chicagoland area.
So you were born and grew up there, right?
Yeah, I grew up in a town called Buffalo Grove, Illinois, 25 miles north of the city of Chicago.
Describe yourself as a child.
You know, I have two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. I grew up on a cul-de-sac where everyone was around the same age. We were always played outside and were competitive in everything we did, from playing the ultimate frisbee, from playing tackle football, Red Rover. We would play running bases, baseball, basketball. We'd wrestle, both WWE fake wrestling and real wrestling. We'd box in backyards or in garages. It was very, very competitive. Um, but the one thing about me is I never fully had the confidence in myself, the full confidence in myself to be who I am today, to be as outgoing as I am. I never had the diet that I have now. When I graduated college, by the way, I picked up 2 degrees in personal training to pay the bills so I can intern for free in sports broadcasting. So fitness is always valuable to me. And it's a big reason that I love athletics too, but I never had the body and the discipline, the work ethic when it came to working out and everything of that nature when it mattered the most until I was too late, till I was 16, 17 years old. That's when it really clicked for me. But so I've always been super competitive where I grew up. I grew up with the Chicago Bulls, diehard Bulls fan, basketball fan. Basketball is my first love. I played all sports growing up. Basketball was always my favorite sport. Played lacrosse as well. I mean, that's where I grew up. I went to a high school called Adlai E. Stevenson High School, 6,000 kids. It's the top public school in the country, one of them. Very competitive there with academics, very competitive there with sports. So I had a lot of diversity around me. Can you imagine 6,000 kids? And so uh, cold ass winters, man. And that's why by the time I was 18, I wanted to go to somewhere warm, to college, culture shock. That's why I chose the University of Arizona. I could have gone to a lot of different schools. I chose Arizona for the good weather, the good sports, got some good academic scholarship there. And I just wanted to get the hell away, man. I didn't care where I would go to college. I just knew what I was going to do. It didn't matter where I would go. It mattered what I did. And that's why I chose the University of Arizona from Chicago. And 18 years of that Chicago winter was enough for me.
You studied communications and sport management, I believe, right? Is it?
Correct.
When did you made up your mind to be in the sports?
So when I was in high school, my senior year, I did these morning announcements with my buddy. So we get up in front of the 6,000 kids, or we do the Friday morning announcements. We do our like little anchor man. I'd seen the movie Borat came out the year before. I love Borat, and I love Dude, Where's My Car? Like those two, and like I used to do a really good Borat accent too. Hello, my name is Borat, and I come to the U.S. of A. We used to mess with each other all the time, and that's kind of where I got this idea of doing on camera stuff. So then when I got to college, I would do, they had like UATV, University of Arizona TV, and I auditioned for the sports anchor role, but they thought I'd be better as the news anchor, and I'm like, okay, great. It's a more prominent role. And I was doing it and I hated it. It wasn't sports. And I didn't like it. So I left and I stopped doing that for a couple of years. And then finally my senior year, I'm studying for the LSAT to go to law school to potentially be a sports agent. I always knew I'd be in sports, right? But I thought a sports agency wrote, but I was supposed to get into this prestigious group that they didn't select me for. And then somebody told me the audition for the Arizona Athletics to be the sports reporter for the basketball and the football team.
Hmm.
Cat Nation was the show. So I auditioned and I got the role. So I was doing this while I was studying for the LSAT. And I took the LSAT, but during that time, I realized, because it's my first time really doing sports, brought what I want to do, the sports reporting. I really like this. I apologize for swearing. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that in your
Yeah, you're
podcast.
good. Yeah, yeah, you're good.
So my senior year of college, by the falls, when I realized, wow, why am I even studying law? I want to be in sports broadcasting. And that's when I was all in, 21 years old.
And where did you go from there?
So I graduated. I picked up. It's a crazy story. I ended up when I was in the movie theater, and I saw this bald head. His name's David Kaplan, who's the voice of Chicago sports. So I came home to Chicago that summer, and I introduced myself to him when I saw he went to the bathroom. I shook his hand after he washed his hands, and I said, "Hey, David Kaplan, my name's Dave Schmulenson. I'm a big fan of yours. I just graduated the University of Arizona. I'm looking to get into sports broadcasting, and I would love to pick your brain." He's like, "What are you doing on Wednesday?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm looking for a job." And he's like, "Why don't you come down to the station?" So I shadowed him and everything, and they basically offered me an internship in the fall. And so I had all summer. So I'm like, shoot. In this internship, though, I had to enroll back into community college because of the health insurance thing. They weren't going to pay me. I basically paid to work there because I had to drive downtown and pay $20 for parking. But I picked up 2 degrees in personal training that summer, so I could at least pay some bills and train people. So I would personal train in the morning. I would wake up at 5 a.m. and train clients, and then I would be done by like lunchtime, and then I would go home, eat. Then I would go sit in traffic 2.5 hours to drive to downtown Chicago, and I would sometimes work till midnight or 2 a.m. if there's a baseball game, a basketball game, and wake up and do it again. And I did that for 6 months until the internship ended, and then I moved out to California. and I grinded, and I ended up taking a sales job at Stars, the movie channel, and worked at the NFL Network on weekends. And then I saw a job I had no business getting at USA Today, and that's how I got into sports consulting there. So that's kind of a synopsis of that.
Then eventually the story repeats itself. You go to USA Today, and then you leave the company, and Schmo was born. That's
Correct.
fascinating.
Yep.
So I've seen you trying to call out one of the well well known guy for a grappling match. How's that going?
He won't acknowledge it. He confronted me about it in a very sour way back
Did
in
he?
December.
Did
He
he?
did behind the scenes. He's like, "What are you doing? And did I bother you? I'm sorry." And the truth behind that is, when I was starting out, I sought him. I said, "Hey, this is who I am." Just like how college kids or kids that are struggling would reach out to me now with email, "Hey, looking for advice."
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to him in person when my first UFC event, and I asked him for his email, or he offered to give me his email. He gave me a fake email address. It wasn't even his. He claims that at that time,
You.
and that's what I told him in December when he confronted it. That always left a sour taste in my mouth that this is the type of thing he is. And obviously, we had been very civil, and we're still very civil. I have no beef with him. It's not like, oh, I want to smash him. I'm not Hazmat. I don't want to smash him. But look, my philosophy was this: we're in a sport, right? It's combat sports, and he works for a huge network, and I'm trying to build my own thing here. It's the holiday season. I wanted to do something good for charity. I could find a way with my sponsors to raise $25,000. He could find a way to raise $25,000. This isn't a punching match. This isn't a bloodshed. This is a charity, and I emphasize charity. It is a charity grappling match during holiday time. Raise it for a good cause. Winner gets to pick the charity of their cause, and he's the biggest name at the time. I wouldn't say so anymore, but he was at the time
Look
and
at.
has been and has been for years and had been for years. And I thought I would do something good from that nature, but by no means do I want to hurt him. Do I wish him ill will or anything? I'm not in this to make bad for anybody else. I'm here to do the best, to take Schmover, as I call it. So it's been crickets, and he could have nipped it in the butt and still can at any time. And basically by just acknowledging, say, "Hey, look, I appreciate the offer, but no thank you. This isn't for me." He could easily say that and take the high ground, but he chooses not to. And that's
That's
why
interesting.
I don't push it. But guys that I'm friends with that are in this sport, like a Henry Cejudo, keep ramming it down my throat, and I have fun with it, and it's all fun and games to me. But like, as you can tell, man, you've talked to me now for what, 45 minutes. I'm not a terrible person. I'm not trying to like throw crap on anybody or whatnot. But I thought it'd be a fun thing, and it was, why not, man? We're in a game where he's an antagonizer. So the second somebody gives him a taste of his own medicine, he curls up into a shell. It is what it is.
I saw a video. It seems like you do some BJJ, right? Like I could tell that you. I saw you rolling it.
Look, I mean, I'm in shape. I pride myself on being good in fitness and whatnot. But with this pandemic and whatnot, I mean, I'm not someone who's going and putting on a gi and going to the gym and rolling all the different times. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to tap, or I'm willing to tap someone. I don't do it as much as I would like to. I'm certainly going to change in the near future, as I hope, as more gyms and opportunities open up. But a lot of people think I'm this avid, crazy martial artist or whatever. Let them think whatever they want. They could. I'd like to think I could defend myself, but by no means am I going to sit here and start calling myself a brown belt or a black belt or anything like that.
Would you call out any other person for charity? Like, because I saw Luke Thomas also rolling. I'm like, maybe they should. They
Well,
should roll.
Luke Thomas weighs a little bit damn more than me. I couldn't ever get into his type of thing. I mean, I could fluctuate from 165 to 185, no problem. I could do those 20 pounds, but it's a tall task if you're going to ask me to go above that or even below that by any means. 20, I'm giving people a 20-pound range here. I mean, but in terms of why I chose Ariel and why Ariel makes sense, it's like, look, who else is going to be able to raise that type of money? Ever since then, I'm sure fans, "Oh, Schmo, I'll do this." It's like, that's not going to do anything, man. This isn't, I'm just looking for a fight. No, I'm looking to raise money for a good freaking cause, man. Like, that's what this is about. Like, Mike Tyson isn't going into this fight with Roy Jones Jr., if it happens, to just make money for a payday. There's charity involved with this. Granted, he might have the itch to fight, but look, it's a charity purpose. It's the same thing for me. It's charity driven.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Hey, so I have this quick blitz for you. I'll be asking you a quick question. You give me a quick answer. How does it sound?
Sounds good.
What's your favorite movie?
That's a tough question. There's so many good movies, man.
Okay, you need to answer the question.
Can I give you like a top 5? I mean, there's
Sure,
so many
yeah, go ahead.
freaking movies. Okay, I'll think of it. I mean, I love Batman Begins. I love The Dark Knight. I love American Beauty, No Country for Old Men. Memento is a great movie.
So Christopher Nolan is your guy.
I love Christopher Nolan, man. Christopher Nolan is one of the best directors of all time, no doubt. I like all the John Cusack movies too. Like I love his style too.
You know what's funny? I have one of the tabs on my computer right now open is how Christopher Nolan was shooting the trilogy of Dark Knight. So look at that. Okay, next question. Your favorite songs? Okay, I'll let you pick a few.
I love 90s alternative music. I love Bush. I love Smashing Pumpkins. Those are 2 of my favorite bands for sure. I like Third Eye Blind, but I love Mayonnaise by Smashing Pumpkins. I love Glycerine by Bush, Machine Head. So those are a couple.
So what do you typically do when you have some free time?
I have to sweat every day. So free time to me is I have to sweat every day for at least an hour. So whether it's a strength conditioning workout, whether it's cardio, whether it's yoga, any type of fitness, hiking, cycling, swimming, you name it. I have to work out. I'm always studying. I'm always reading or watching content. Like I'm getting influences from other YouTubers now. I'm even going to what I'm doing during the pandemic. I've even watched people like his name's Eric and Logan Paul and like literally like
Yeah.
YouTubers and vloggers.
So
like
you're studying their craft.
I studying their craft because I'm studying what the younger generation is. If you don't adapt, you die. You know, Toys R Us failed in the early 2000s because they didn't believe in the internet. They let Amazon handle all their distribution fulfillment. No industry is exempt from that rule of thumb. And that's something I tell all these young kids, and I try preaching to all these old dinosaur executives, but they'll fail and they'll die. They don't want to listen to some 30-something kid like me. So I study these kids because this is the next generation, is the audience that I like. You know, my biggest audience is 24 to 35-year-olds. Great. But my next biggest is 18 to 24-year-olds. I want to capture those kids, and I want to study what the 13 to 17-year-old kids want too. So I look at those. I watch a lot of my old stuff to see how I can adapt and get better. A lot of motivational speaking. You know, big influences I have of mine, obviously Joe Rogan. I love Chef Robert Irvine, Tim Ferriss, Jocko Willink. Some different influences that I have with what I do.
That's fascinating. Like people who didn't see you in this character, actually, who don't know Dave, they're probably gonna be watching this, thinking like, "Holy shit, that's a completely different guy from what we thought Schmo is."
Look, I like it that way, man. I didn't do this to necessarily be to be famous and to do all that kind of stuff. I just want to wake up every day, talk sports, and make people laugh. Like, part of being the character too is I didn't want people to know who Dave is, but as things developed and got bigger over time, and Helen and I became all in on media and everything, the pivot with the Schmo Zone and showing who the guy is behind the glasses was something the audience needs to see. And there's a lot of value I can bring. And look, you know, the character itself, and I'm not sure if I said this at the beginning, was mocking the system to the get-go. It's this industry desperately needs change. By putting on the glasses and looking goofy, I'll ask better questions than what's being asked, and I will get a better reaction than what people will normally get. But Dave Schmulenson is behind it. It's an extension of my personality. It's an extension of who I am. It's like I did it to prove a point, and I think I'm proving that every day.
Certainly. Let's go back to the list of questions. What's your favorite sport out of the all you enjoy? You have to choose
Football,
one
man.
here. No, you have to choose
Oh, out
one.
of every single sport. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm right now. I mean, I'm here in Abu Dhabi. I wasn't at the Raiders Stadium for Monday Night Football. It's got to be MMA, and specifically, you're going to ask one organization. It's the UFC. That's my favorite right now. There's no question about it.
What's your favorite country to visit?
Favorite country to visit? Italy. Italy.
The first item on your bucket list.
First item on my bucket list. Holy shit. Snorkel, or sorry, scuba dive the Great Barrier Reef.
That's fantastic. So the last question. So it seems like you've been hustling a lot. So give advice to young entrepreneurs, people who may be starting where you started back in the day. Maybe they're leaving their jobs or whatever they want to pursue in their lives.
Sure. I think, and I wrote about this to a young person yesterday who's kind of looking for direction. It all starts with this. If you do not believe in yourself, no one else will. You can't expect other people to believe in you if you do not believe in yourself. So you need to have some confidence right off the bat. And don't be afraid to, especially if you're in your 20s or if you're long, take as many jobs and positions as you can. It might not be something that you want, but that's fine because you might not know what you want. By doing as many things as you can, you're going to start being able to check things off. Oh, I don't want to do this. I'm not good at this. You got to be able to find exactly what it is that you want. If you can find exactly what you want by the time you're into your 30s, then you're golden. Then you're right on path. I'm blessed and lucky. I knew what I wanted very early on in my early 20s. Not everybody wants that. So find what it is that you're good at, that you love, because when you're doing what you love, it feels like you never have to work another day in your life. So find what it is that you love. Don't be afraid to take a step sideways or a step backwards in order to inevitably take two steps forwards. So that's what that entails. So, if you're going to, if you need to be able to put food on the table. So if you might not like the idea of working 9 to 5, but guess what? There's still many hours in the day beyond those 8 hours you're working at 9 to 5. So if you really want something bad in life, you have to put in the work. There's no secret shortcuts. There's no secret sauce. You have to work time. There's times where I've worked literally 20 hours in days, and Helen too, where Helen slept in her car and she's traveled to Albuquerque from Vegas in a day to interview fighters. Same thing with me. We've done this together. We've done trips day and back to Coconut Creek, Florida to go to gyms or whatever we have to do. Don't be afraid to do things that make you uncomfortable, that are difficult or whatever. Next line of advice, consistency. If you're creating content, you have to be consistent. If you just put something out one day and then you don't do something till 3 weeks later or 3 months later, you're not going to be relevant. People aren't going to tune in. I don't care if there's 5 people watching, 50 people watching, 50 million people. You have to be consistent. You have to keep putting out that content. People have to know what to expect. People know they're going to get a podcast on the Schmo Zone every Tuesday. People know when they see the Schmo and the Pro, it's going to be kind of outlandish. It's going to be goofy. They'll get a good sense of the personality of the fighter or the person being interviewed. You set that expectation. Don't be too hard on yourself, which is something that I have to battle with every day, because I'm my hardest critic. I'm extremely, extremely hard on myself. Don't be afraid. And you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Not be afraid of what other people think of you, because guess what? They're not living in your shoes. They're not the ones paying the bills. They're not the ones doing all that stuff. Like, you live one life. Go for it. That's my best advice.
Hey man, thank you very much for the interview. It's just fantastic advice, fantastic interview, and I'm really glad I was able to see, and the listeners were able to see the personality behind Schmo.
Thank you, man. And I appreciate you being persistent from getting at me. I know you reached out a few times. I went back to look at the emails, and I'm glad you were persistent and patient with me. And I'm glad we're able to put this hour in together. And I appreciate being on your podcast. You've asked me some excellent questions, and I know I've given you some material about me that I haven't given to other people before. So for all of your listeners out there, I hope they could take away some good things out of this, and they go for it,